I'm your host, Ryder Todd Smith, and today we're joined by Executive Director of the Renne Public Management Group, Nelson Fialho, and founding partner of the Renne Public Management Group, John Holtzman. Nelson and John, welcome to the Public CEO Report.
Thanks, Ryder, and thanks for having me, and us, I should say.
100%, John. Well, you're a multi-time repeat guest, so always good to have you back on for a conversation, and talk a little bit about Renne Public Management Group, or RPMG as we talk about it, and kind of get to know more about that operation as well, since Nelson here is helping you head that up.
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity to do that.
So RPLG deals with a wide range of legal matters, from labor issues and employment issues. How does your legal practice differ from the management group that you guys have formed? And why did you guys decide to create a management group?
Well, you know, I've worked in public sector for 40-ish years. And one of the things that I realized, especially because I worked in-house in City County, San Francisco for a long time, is that, you know, many of the problems that we face as lawyers really have to do with deeper issues in the management of cities and counties and local governments. And that, you know, let's face it, as much as I'd like to think that lawyers know everything, that there are professionals out there who have a great deal of specific knowledge about how to run things and how to, I mean, our focus is how can cities and counties, et cetera, run well and gain the respect of the public? And there are people like Nelson, who longtime city manager of Pleasanton, but many others who are highly respected in the field, who are great managers, and who you can bring in to solve the underlying problems, which are really at the heart of what makes government work.
So partly what I'm hearing is the legal issues ultimately are a symptom of perhaps an operational issue that can be addressed by an operations professional.
That's right. I mean, a lot of course, my background was employment law, and that's always true in the employment law world. But it's true also when it comes to how is a council getting along with the city manager, or how are they working together, or it's true with respect to a particular division is not operating well. Many city managers don't have the time, the ability, bandwidth to handle that. It's also true there's been a tremendous brain drain, as you know, in public sector, although a lot of great people were coming up as well, but who need help and training and mentorship and all of that.
Yeah, the sulfur tsunami was certainly something that we've been talking about for 15 plus years now. And I mean, the tsunami's here, and we're seeing that the consequences of that. So Nelson, we keep talking about you like you're not in the room, but you are in the room. So real quick, Nelson, since John just hinted at your background, tell me a little bit about yourself and why you're the man with a plan when it comes to RPMG.
Yeah, well, thanks, Ryder, for having us. And as you mentioned, I am the executive director of RPMG. I'm also the former city manager of Pleasanton. I've spent approximately 35 years in local government in various capacities. My longest stint was in Pleasanton, but I also served the cities of Campbell, Hayward, and San Dimas in Southern California. And my expertise, so to speak, in local government is really around human resources and labor relations and financial matters. So that's what brought me to the firm, and we're really excited about what we're building at RPMG. The firm combines the expertise of former leaders and managers in local government. And when I say local government, that not only means cities and counties, but also school districts, and we even have some nonprofit representation. And our goal is to offer clients professional support and consulting services. So we're really happy to provide this service in alignment with RPLG to our clients.
Where do you see the biggest value that you guys are providing for clients from your perspective?
Well, I think it's the people that we have on our team. They're pretty incredible, and I encourage anybody who's watching to look them up on our website. I think because we have assembled such a deep pool of former, like I said, city managers, assistant city managers, department heads, et cetera, it allows us to effectively guide and assist public agencies with key initiatives. Some of the services that we're offering to our clients include things like strategic planning services, performance evaluation services for appointed officials on behalf of agency boards or city councils. Executive coaching is another niche that we're offering. Facilitation services of any kind, either to elected bodies or department head groups, or conflict resolution in the community. And then, of course, things like professional training and development, and then organizational studies.
These all sound highly aligned with your background, as you mentioned, in city management and HR issues.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I think is a real value to our clients is because we've assembled a great group of individuals to support clients. The way we approach these projects is that we spend time thoughtfully planning and executing the collaboration with the client. And so each project is sort of individually tailored to the client's core objectives. And then we work alongside, agency representatives to develop and execute the work plan.
Seems like a reasonable and effective approach, and I assume most of that collaboration is directly with the city manager?
It varies. We've been brought in by city managers, which of course we love working with, or county executives. But from time to time, we have to engage directly with the elected officials and work through, a complex issue. So I think, again, not to repeat myself, I think the value that we bring is that most of our team is comprised of accomplished retired executives in the public sector who have knowledge not only working directly with chief appointed officials, but also the complexity that's often involved with working with a diverse, multifaceted elected body.
How did John, I guess I'll start with you on this too, and then Nelson chime in. I mean, obviously I'm assuming at some point there's a point of collaboration, right? Where you two talk with each other when there's a particularly sticky project coming up and there's some insights to be offered or shared. How does that point of collaboration happen between the two of you, between the RPMG side and the RPLG side?
Well, let me say, I think it even goes beyond not working around Nelson, who's running the organization, but it goes between people in Nelson's organization and folks directly in our organization. I'll give you an example. This weekend, a client called with a very high-level personnel crisis of a sort, and basically it was a problem between two executives, and I was able to get on the phone with one of very, very highly experienced HR professionals that are in Nelson's shop, and I hooked this person up with the head of the organization, and off we go. We wake up Monday morning, and we're already working on a solution. So there can be things like that. Sometimes there are, very often, there's legal overlap in areas, particularly around problems between city management and city councils, for example. Obviously, when I say city, think county as well.
Sure.
Often, so I'm on the phone with Nelson all of the time, saying, hey, here's a problem. Very often the client is saying, geez, if only we had, this, because, you're just a lawyer. And so this comes up, pretty constantly, actually. It's really, I think it is more important in terms of the work we do in a lot of ways than the law work that we do.
Nelson, what's your perspective on that? What's it like being in this position now? I mean, you always, when you were city manager, you always had a city attorney at your fingertips, although their specialty might be different than certainly John's or the breadth of what RPLG can do. But what's your viewpoint on that?
So I 100% agree with John's assessment. And if I think back to my days as a city manager, no issue that's complex can be managed by one individual or one department. It often overlaps, right? Technical expertise and the depth of experience. So you're constantly relying on generalists, maybe legal advisors, maybe engineers or accountants or whatever. So when we're engaging with clients, the complex matters that we're confronted with are, very similar. And while it may start as a legal matter, it may morph into, a management issue, or it may start as a management issue and it morphs into a legal or a public policy issue. So I think that's the differentiation that we bring, I think, to the market is we've got a very strong, capable, mission-driven law firm on one side of the house. We have a pool of management and leadership consultants on the other side of the house that can augment or complement those services. And then we haven't talked about RPPG, which is our public policy arm in Sacramento that provides a lot of advice around advocacy and public policy development for its clients. So as I'm talking, if you can kind of imagine the Venn diagram with the client in the middle and the overlapping services being provided to the client, to me, that's an incredible value that we bring. And it's exciting to be part of the effort.
It's a helpful mashup, particularly when I hear about you describing some of the situations you're going to or these management situations. And John, it might be helpful too, just for context on that, because while RPLG has a broad swath of law area, the labor kind of practice has been a core, and I think also core to your history as an attorney. Could you just talk about that particular niche and the role that it plays at RPLG? Because it just seems so complementary to a lot of the work that RPMG is focused on.
Well, that's really true. And so first of all, RPMG has a couple of what I would consider to be the best known and also hopefully best HR professionals in the business. Deborah Gill, who was recently head of CalPELRA, and I'm sorry, Nelson, help me here.
She was the head of CalPELRA, and she was the former director of human resources and labor relations for the city.
Right, but then, and also Donna Villancourt, who is generally thought also to be really one of the real stars of the business. So yeah, I mean, so this for me is incredibly critical. If I'm in labor negotiations and I need support, if we have accommodations issues, which we have all the time, those are not things, I mean, you can use a lawyer for an accommodation issue, and obviously the broader law is that, but these are often, more complicated. If you have performance issues, if you have dismissals, if you have, so performance issues, let's take that as an example. Now, I can tell you how to write a performance evaluation, but having a good HR person who is building the record and really doing a deep dive and really understanding that is a whole other thing. Or investigations. These are things that, I'm not saying lawyers can't do, but quite frankly, a very experienced HR person is going to do them better and deeper. And they're going to get to the core of the issue, you hope, at least. So, and, I'll say they also are probably more focused on the ongoing nature of the enterprise than we are as lawyers who swoop in on a particular thing. We take care of that thing and we move on. Right. So, labor negotiations, what's the first thing we always go into? We always say, the client says, we don't have any money. And and the union says, oh, you're hiding, something the size of the U.S. Mint,
Right.
and having professionals who can go in and work between the folks in the organization to come to a position about what is realistic financially, because no is a perfectly good answer, I always say, in labor negotiations. However, it's not an answer that's often going to get you to a conclusion. So understanding that and having people who have worked in public sector who also, frankly, are not threatening to the folks who are there, because they're really just help. And we do understand, I think, in a way that's different than a lot of other folks. We're not coming in because we're better than, or because we're telling you what to do, but because we hopefully we can really help you develop ideas about how to get through this.
No, fair point. Nelson, could you, why RPMG? You retired as a city manager. You, like a lot of city managers, failed to effectively retire. You couldn't help yourself. You had to stay involved. Why RPMG, and how has that work transition gone, and how does it play into your role today?
I'm at the end of the day, I'm still a local government junkie, for lack of a better description. I really just appreciate what we do as professionals to keep cities and counties and California moving forward. So I think there's an important role for professional managers to play in that process, and I want to continue to provide that support. So when I retired, I knew I was going to consult. I always had in my head that upon retirement, I would continue to provide support in some way. I landed at RPLG, much like, I think many people do. You have a relationship or a previous affiliation with somebody, and I had worked with the RPLG team for years in my capacity as a city manager. I had witnessed them provide services very effectively, not only to us, but to other local government agencies. And I had an opportunity to talk to them about what they had planned for RPMG, both John and Art. And I was just motivated by the opportunity to build from the ground up, a different kind of consulting practice that relies on multiple professions to support the effort that we provide our clients. So we're having a great time. We've been around now for a little less than 2 years. Our client base is growing, and the work that we're doing is varied in local government. And that's all great, but I think what propels it even beyond that is the group that we've assembled and continue to assemble to support not only the RPMG practice, but the law side and the public policy side of the Renne family of businesses.
Well, it's good when you have a mission. Mission tends to attract people who are committed to that mission, and like moths to a flame, you end up with good people gathered around trying to go fulfill the mission. So I've always respected RPLG and John and Art and Louise and all the founding folks at the firm for really trying to be a very purpose-driven organization, public law and the public interest that I think has been helpful for the kind of talent that they bring around the campfire, so to speak. John, you, I guess, speaking of being mission-driven and sharing insights and information, you recently had a chance to speak at the Cal City's annual conference. I think you were taking on fire safety, if I recall correctly. What kind of information was shared there and discussed, and what were the key takeaways that you think were worthy of sharing at that environment?
So, yeah, let me say first, the whole area of fire safety is a very, well, it's a challenging area, but it's also a very exciting area because we were there with a couple of fire chiefs, including Dave Winokur, who I represent, Moraga Orinda Fire District, one of the greatest thinkers that I know of around on wildfire prevention and frankly, wildfire legislation, which is to say fuel break and defensible space and all of these things have been he and I have been doing a lot of cutting edge work in that area, trying to really, make a dent in the problem. So he talked a great deal about the newest thinking about fire spread and fire modeling, et cetera, and a lot of things that we're not currently doing, some of which would actually make fire prevention, I think, more targeted. One of the real challenges is that we have tended to not do the kind of modeling that really shows exactly where the fire spread is coming from. There are these very small trails of fire that actually make it through. And so he talked a lot about that and about all the legislation that we have done in this area to be a leader in fire prevention. I talked about a public policy challenge, which I'm super interested in. So we all think wildfire is a problem, at least when it affects WUIs, when it affects cities, et cetera, clearly. And we're all very committed, it seems. Many in the public sign up for FireWise communities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yet, when it comes to doing the very hard work of fire prevention itself, there's tremendous resistance. There is institutional resistance because, fire districts, et cetera, overlap typically with other governmental agencies, whether they're parks districts or cities or counties so you have this overlap and you have very unclear lines of jurisdiction in some cases about how do you get the legislation you need through. You have a lot of resistance by institutional folks, but really government folks as much as anything about doing that work. It is expensive work, so that's a problem. You've got a lot of the old line about home is your castle problem. I have said, I came from Brooklyn and I never realized until very recently, I've represented Moraga Orinda Fire District for 6 years, that shrubs are one of the most powerful political influences in California. You really haven't experienced life until you've taken on a person's shrubs. So there are these tremendous both legal challenges. The law has all kinds of problems. I'll give you an example. CEQA has an exemption for defensible space. It does not have a clear exemption for fuel breaks, which we very clearly need to have because they're as or more important depending, basically defensible space is all right around the property, but obviously by the time a fire gets to within a few feet of a property, you'd sure wish it had stopped a lot earlier.
Sure. Yeah.
So we talked a lot about, and I will say I sounded maybe a tad messianic about the thing, which is that we need to get serious about the fact that we are talking a good game, but not doing the work. And the problem isn't getting really that much better, despite all of our talk about how we're doing these things and how we're using, we have great modern technology around modeling, around, building, escape routes and all these kinds of things, even, with respect to being able to use drones to look at, where are the dead trees and how to cite people. Our district cited, over 1,000 people this year for a very small district. By comparison, CAL FIRE, I understand, cited 16 people statewide. So there's a lot to be done, but a lot of it is encouraging people and educating people, but some of it is also in the enforcement area and really being sure that people are doing what they need to do.
I'd also observe, first of all, that sounds interesting. It sounds like maybe I need to have that fire chief on for a separate podcast to discuss the very specifics of best practices for wildfire, wildland urban interface, WUI challenges and issues. That would be an interesting discussion. I'm working with a client right now, and we're going through housing element issues. And part of the risk there is they're up against wildland urban interface. And, on the one hand, there's this immense state pressure to zone land and make it available for housing developments. And on the other hand, some of that is getting pushed into these wildland urban interface areas that are creating more fire risk. And simultaneously, you're seeing private sector pressure around fire insurance itself, where it's not even available, right? So like there was a development near me here in southern Orange County where they had to come to a stop because the houses, they couldn't get insurance for the houses in order to be able to sell the house so that the private market would actually provide a mortgage on the house.
So let me give you a really good example. I'm sorry to take it off track a little bit, but it's just a super interesting issue. So this chief he's a Hoover fellow, and he is working at Hoover. They just issued a report. I wish I could give you the site right now on how we can get, the model ultimately for compliance with fire prevention measures is being able to assess fire risk at a very local level, at a micro level. It's never going to be one house because, literally one house just doesn't do it. But very small clusters of houses can take measures that we then could translate into fire risk, which means that your actions could lower the cost of your insurance or make you insurable when other people aren't. So to me, this is the holy grail of both fire prevention and insurance preservation. And it is absolutely doable with the tools that we have now.
Interesting. Well, it's nice when you can connect avoid a tragedy, the common situations, which may be the appropriate reference here, where if the problem's so big, it doesn't feel like any individual action can make a difference. But if you can break it down to models where individual action could make a difference, then you could have people who are incentivized to be responsive to the situation, right? That's
right.
That's where it gets intriguing. Well, so this is obviously one of many kind of hot issues that are affecting public agencies in California. And you guys have an interesting perspective on that from the management side and the legal side. Nelson, do you have some other hot issues that are kind of brewing in your head as challenges to take on, or things you're seeing in organizations that you think city managers and other executives should be thinking about for their public agencies?
Yeah, I think I would distill it into three buckets, and this is where I think RPLG and RPMG working together can certainly be a resource for clients. I think the bread and butter of local governments is to ensure quality of life and infrastructure is good in our communities. And I think one of the things that we know but maybe don't talk about enough is the state of the infrastructure deficits that exist throughout our municipalities. And so, I see that as a looming liability on par with some of the pension liabilities that we all experienced not too long ago. So I think it's important to talk about that and work constructively and effectively to resolve it. And I think, consulting firms like RPMG can support that effort. I think
can I dive in on that one before we move to the second, just at the risk of interrupting? So we're thinking about deferred maintenance or deferred fulfillment of capital funds to do replacement on major infrastructure, right? So if you got a 100-year pipe and you're 50 years into it and you haven't saved 50% of the cost to replace that pipe, then you're behind schedule. So those are the examples. That's a very extreme example, but an example of this deferred maintenance I'm assuming you're referring to. And it strikes me that organizations feel pressure on this because sometimes when they're under financial strain, the easiest thing to do is to defer maintenance in order to close a budget gap. Is that that's my layman's interpretation of it. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Or they use one-time capital to fund, a desired amenity, in lieu of funding the deferred maintenance. And so I think, giving most professionals sort of understand the mechanics and the 101 of municipal budgeting, but helping elected bodies, newly elected individuals, understand the importance of things like deferred maintenance and living within your means, or thinking about new revenue opportunities, or expenditure cutbacks and what that might look like without sacrificing service levels, I think is a nuance and a depth that many of our consultants can offer clients. So thank you for that. I think that's important to illuminate.
Well, and then I guess one other point along those lines too, because this has certainly been a challenge for a while, and I think the problem is, as you're noting, it's only gotten worse over the last 30 years. But I also have this vague recollection, like in the 90s or early 2000s, there was a GASB change that was designed to actually highlight some of the deferred maintenance issues inside budget documents and whatnot when doing financial reporting, which was an effort, I think, to try to mitigate some of this. Do you have a recollection of that, or am I going too deep down a nerd hole here?
No, it was the GASB rule was implemented at the same time that GASB required cities to post their market. You may recall their market valuations of OPEB and pension liabilities. So it's a way to sort of illuminate to the public and other institutions about the looming liabilities that municipalities are carrying, but not recording. And so the effect of that was, we got to do something about our pension liabilities. And not every city, but most agencies dealt with that seriously. They implemented reforms through the labor process, or constructed financial strategies to address them. I think still looming out there is the infrastructure deficit. And to your point, I don't think enough is being done. It's been highlighted, but I think some more serious thought should be put into that area, and we've got experts that can help in that regard. The second area, I think, is you and John alluded to it, and that is the brain drain. And we've been talking about it for years. We thought more in terms of sort of that from an organizational perspective with the baby boomers and the Gen Xers. But it's all of that, but it's also we're seeing a lot. A newer set of electeds entering the public sector realm, and doing that with sometimes limited experience. Not only having a full understanding of how local government works, but even professional experience in their. And I think what we can offer those situations is, more training and development in the area of how local governments work, working in concert with city managers or department heads to improve the level of communication effectiveness in the city council, city manager form of government. So we do a lot of training in that area. One of our consultants is known for that, and it's great to have them on our team to do that on behalf of clients. So just kind of exercising the training and development of how council manager form of government works. What does effective communication look like in that environment? And what are some of the building blocks and tools to be a high performing local government? And then I think the last thing is, and you talked about a little bit about this too, Ryder, earlier in your conversation with John, and that's just constant state intrusion into local government operations. The most obvious one is, sort of what they're doing in regards to new housing legislation and rules and regulations around that. But there's also other issues in the area of public policy, public safety, financial management, and even human resources and labor relations. So, those are the three issues that I think generally local governments need to be super mindful of.
Those are big, sticky issues, to say the least.
Let me just chime in, Ryder.
Please, John.
On one of those, just to take it a little bit. I don't know why I always seem to take the wide angle focus, but okay, there you are. When I started in government, I thought I was going to go to the federal government because I went to Stanford Law School, and Stanford Law School at the time, at least, didn't know that local government existed. And if they did, they wouldn't have thought well of it. But it was still not long after John Kennedy had talked about, government bringing in the best and the brightest. And there was this, I think, popular vision of government. And government's never been 100% popular, no matter how you slice it. But I think one of the tremendous challenges that we face right now is, government has been badly devalued by the public. And that's true, of course, most on the federal level, probably secondarily on the state level, and probably least on the local level. But it has, nonetheless, it's pervaded our view to the point where now, also, no criticism of anybody, but folks get elected sometimes who are really opposed to the function that they're being elected to manage. We certainly see it, more even on the federal level.
Sure.
But I think it's very challenging on multiple levels because, local government, I mean, say what you will about federal government, say what you will about state government. Most of what local government does isn't subject to reasonable dispute that we should be doing it, right? I mean, police, fire, roads. I mean, maybe you want more or less of it, but you don't have a lot of people coming out against roads. And a lot of it is really not very political. I mean, when all is said, at least I don't think it is. I mean, these are basic functions, basic amenities that make our lives what they are. And I think that, first of all, I think local government needs to be making its case about why it is, the home of services. I don't know that the public really fully understands that essentially all services, Tip O'Neill said all politics is local. I say all services are local. It's not 100% true, but it isn't far from being true.
Right.
And I think the other part is that, we need to educate the whole generation of young people about the good feeling that comes from being able to deliver services to people who need them and want them.
No, I think that's true. I mean, it's important for recruiting folks into the space and the profession. And obviously there's niches within that space, policing versus fire versus, the city manager's office, right? That all have their niches. But I certainly, you have RPLG has a phenomenal fellowship program where you bring in students to learn about public policy and local government and the law. That's very innovative and unique, I believe, among local government law firms in the state. At my firm, Tripepi Smith, you go look at our team, it's a lot of fresh out of college folks who didn't know anything about local government, and they're here to learn, which is fine. We're going to give them a very steep learning curve, but we get them into the profession, right? We get them into the space and get them taking an interest in local government, sitting into conferences and things like that. So I'd also just observe that, the correlation, the points you noted were devalued of government, and I think the correlating sentiment too is one of trust. So it's at times devalued, and it's also become distrusted. And maybe when you trust something less, you devalue it. Therefore, it probably makes sense that you would correlate those emotions. And I would say all levels of government have work to do, from my perspective, on how they're maintaining and earning trust with the public, and being more thoughtful about trust building exercises that would probably correlate to returning people's perception of the value of government to what they're getting done.
I agree, and it's one of the reasons we have built on the government side of our firm, on the law side of the firm, a strong ethics function, and we do ethics investigations now. It used to be all of our investigations were gender, sexual harassment, race, et cetera. Now, probably fully 50% of our investigations are ethics issues.
Hmm. Wow. Any other? At the risk of turning away from that important subject, any other policy areas or challenges worth noting or observing that are kind of affecting your vision for 2024 or causing you to think about areas where you want to make investments as a firm or as a management group?
Well, Nelson, I'll let you start there.
So what we've noticed is that agencies, kind of back to the point about brain drain, is that they're struggling with recruitment and retention efforts inside of local government. And as folks retire, they're looking for capable people to come in and fill an interim niche. And so we've had some success in that area. We've had some of our consultants go and serve as interim directors, department managers for agencies. And so as I think about the coming year and the volume of requests that we're receiving, a little bit more attention in that regard is something that we'll put some effort in making sure that we've got the right assembly of people that we can offer agencies.
So take me down that path a little bit too, because obviously it sounds like things are growing around there and you're busy. I assume you want to be adding to your bench of talent. So if I'm a city manager type or a executive type or a higher level staff member who's getting ready to face retirement, or I just want a new kick in life, why should I reach out to you and chat with you about working at RPMG?
Well, if you care about the profession and you're not done and you want to continue to provide value to local governments, pick up the phone or call me, or email me to learn a little bit more about what RPMG has to offer. I think the great thing about working for us is you'll be a part of an expanding team of very capable people that are well known statewide, and we're having fun providing that service to individuals. And we typically assemble our work in team environments. So yes, we might collaborate with an attorney, but no project necessarily is done in isolation. And so we rely on other experts to sort of support that effort. So I think that that provides a rich environment to contribute. It sort of allows you to maybe meet other individuals in the profession to support clients, and then the product is just a better outcome because you're kind of assembling and working on that together as a team. I think we skipped over this a little bit, but some of the people that we've got affiliated with the firm, as John mentioned, pretty well known. We mentioned Deborah Gill and Donna Valancourt, but here are some other sort of interesting names that I think people are familiar. Dan Rich is the former city manager of Mountain View. He served that capacity for many years successfully. Drew Corbett, the former city manager of San Mateo, not only a local government expert, but a fiscal expert who started out as a finance director and a budget analyst that really has a depth of knowledge on our team in those matters. June Catalano, the former city manager of Pleasant Hill, who at the time of retirement was the longest serving city manager in the Bay Area. Her background is in community development. Kevin Duggan, who is the dean of city managers.
He is the dean.
Has trained, published and supported agencies in a very noble and constructive way. And also the former city manager of Mountain View in Campbell is on our team. And the list goes on. I really just encourage people to look us up on RennePublicManagement.com, because I think you'll be impressed.
Awesome. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so just on our side, I would say, a lot of our goal for the year is, given how much housing work is happening as a result, really, of Sacramento, dealing with all of these requirements from Sacramento and other housing issues. We recently brought in Ruben Cruz, who was the county council of Shasta County for a long time, and we have Ann Danforth, who was longtime city attorney of Tiburon, and Andrew Shen. So we're developing, a new sort of housing team. Who I plan to get the fire teams and the housing teams to go to war with each other and sort of like have little soldiers on see who lives longer. But anyway, so that's, I would say, that's a focus for us in the coming year.
Well, it's certainly a hot area, and a hot area of legal matters too these days, between lawsuits involving builder's remedy and working through, I'm assuming what'll be a slew of lawsuits either brought by the Attorney General office or lawsuits that are being brought by developers trying to get projects done in cities under some theoretical element of the law. All right, and as we start to wrap up here real quick, so if people wanted to run into you guys at some upcoming conferences here pretty soon, where are people going to find RPLG or RPMG on the circuit?
Todd, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. Sure. And this, of course, is more in the for those who are in the HR bent or employment bent. CalPELRA is our Ryder mentioned that, labor employment was sort of originally the core of the firm, and so that's coming up in November. I'm going to be at MMA&C briefly, at least for a day or so, coming up. And then obviously will be League City Managers Conference. I think a couple of the other smaller league conferences, and we were just at CSAC, but so that's what's on our plate. I don't know, Nelson.
Yeah, near term, most of our HR professionals will be at CalPELRA here in the next couple of weeks. And then later in February, the city manager side of the house, for lack of a better term, will be at the City Managers Conference along with John and Art Hardinger. So look us up. We'll be roaming the halls, and we hope we can spend some time getting to know you and your needs and talking about RPMG and RPLG.
And we throw a good party, so all you got to do is drop by and ask for an invite. We'd be happy to invite anybody who's on this.
Everybody loves a good party, and we'll be in Hollywood for that city manager conference. So you can walk the halls, talk to RPLG and RPMG, and then you can go get a photo with Batman on the street. So everybody's
there. You go.
Situation. And then last but not least, how do folks get a hold of you, John? How do people get in touch with you?
Best way to reach me is email. It's jholtzman, JHOLTZMAN, @publiclawgroup, all one word.com. So everything is very easy. Public Law Group. It's all at publiclawgroup.com.
Awesome. And Nelson?
Fialho at publiclawgroup.com via email or by phone at 925-437-4002. And of course, everything is on our website at RennePublicManagement.com.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, that's today's report. My thanks to Nelson and John for joining us, from the whole PublicCEO team, and myself, Ryder Todd Smith. Thank you for your time. We hope you learned something new and inspiring that will help you in your public service. Remember, PublicCEO has a daily newsletter that is free to those who sign up at PublicCEO.com. If you have feedback, questions,
or guest suggestions for Public CEO Report, please email editor@publicceo.com.